Hello, Taylor Ellwood here, and I'm sorry I'm a little bit late to this video live stream, but here I am. So tonight I want to talk about how to develop relationship with spirits and why I think it's important to build a relationship with respect. I've talked about this before, but I'll tell you that it never ceases to amaze me how many times I come across an approach toward working with spirits, and really an approach toward working with magic that's more or less just very much about objectifying the world and spirits and everything else around you. It's very will based. It's I'm going to impose my will upon the world in order to get what I want. And I know I've been there, done that. I'm not saying I haven't, because I definitely have. It's just not where I'm at now, and it's not where I've been for a long time with my magical work. My own approach to spirits has evolved over the years. I've never ever really worked with them from a place of, you have to do what I command because, you're supposed to. Or I'm going to summon angels in order to compel demons to do X, Y, and Z, or any of the other things like that. I've always found that approach to be antithetical to who I am. And I think in general, it's a really naive and arrogant assumption that spirits will automatically be compelled to do what you want them to do. And I definitely see some material out there, contemporary material that's being published, which definitely seems to present that particular belief and perspective. And I think it's a very naive and arrogant and dangerous perspective when it comes to working with spirits, because it's a presumption that, spirits will automatically do what you want them to do, and that's simply not the case. So my own approach to working with spirits is very much based around this idea of mutual respect and developing mutual respect. The first work that I did with spirits was really with elemental spirits when I was a teenager, and one of the things that I did at the time is I actually ended up making a pact of sorts with the different elemental spirits, where I basically said, I'm going to give you I'm going to give you blood in exchange for some of your essence. And I did this working where I had memorized the hermetic symbols for the spirits, and I took a knife and I cut myself and I gave some blood to the land or to the fire or water or whatever. And I found that this connection worked, that this worked really well. The spirits were more than happy to connect and get a bit of exchange. So I exchanged some of my life essence in return for some of theirs. And that was really the first relationship that I formed with spirits. So it was based on a mutual exchange. And for a long time, I would say that was my approach to working with spirits. It was, okay, I want you to do X, and in return, I'll do Y. So, it was very much a bargaining type of approach. It wasn't, I'm going to force you to do this. Instead, it was, I want to have a relationship with you where I'm going to give you X, and in return, you give me Y. And I would say to some degree that's still the case with some of the work that I do with spirits. But along the way, I began to shift my attitude and perspective as I came to recognize that in working with spirits, it seemed to me like if a fundamental aspect of magic is about liberation, it seemed to me that it was antithetical to magic itself to go in and try and compel spirits to do what you want them to do. And at the same time, it seemed to me that developing a relationship that was strictly business with spirits wasn't as effective as trying to develop a relationship where I tried to understand where they were coming from and what they really needed, and then decided in return if that was something I wanted to support and if it was something that I could work with. And so this became a relationship about developing mutual harmony, mutual alignment with the spirits. It wasn't so much about trying to compel spirits to do something. It was more about trying to reach a mutual relationship of benefit where I really came to respect them and where they were coming from. and at the same time wanted to establish that respect from them. Now, there are always stories that people will share about experiences they've had with like demons or whatever else, where they summoned a goetic demon, and afterwards that demon burned down their house, or the demon did this, or the demon did that, or whatever else, or some other type of spirit. And I've never had those experiences. I've never had a situation where I've had a spirit truly mess up my life. I've sometimes taken advice from spirits that hasn't ultimately been good, and I've had to reevaluate my relationship. Like I ended up reevaluating my relationship with Ellwood and Bune, in large part because the advice I was getting was not very helpful. It was leading me down the wrong way. Now, some people might say, well, maybe that was part of it. Maybe that's where they needed you to go. But really, I don't want a spirit to have to teach me a hard lesson in life. Life is hard enough. I don't need spirits doing that for me. So, I really evaluated those relationships and decided it was time to close them off. And so I did. I actually, I ended the relationship. I basically said my thanks, and I got rid of the paintings that I used to evoke them. I think that with like with anything, any relationship, a relationship evolves over time, and the signs that a relationship is working can be found in the way that in terms of the actual respect that occurs, but it can also be found in the sense of what is actually happening along the way with this relationship. So there was a time where I would say that I worked with Bune or Ellwood, and I got definitely good results, and I thought, and I'm like, yeah, this works for me. This is a good relationship, and I was more than happy to continue to hold up my end of that relationship. But then at a certain point, when I started to see the results in my life shift in a way that wasn't effective, that's when I began to really question whether or not it was really fruitful for me in the long term to stick with that relationship. And what I realized was, no, it really wasn't, that I needed to reevaluate my relationship with the spirits accordingly. And so again, I cut off connection with them. I let them go. Now, some people would say, well, if you were commanding them, that wouldn't happen. And my answer would be like, okay, that's great. But then why have you had worse negative experiences than I've had? I mean, I've had a couple negative experiences where, yeah, I ended up following the advice, and it ultimately wasn't, some of it was good and some of it wasn't. They've had experiences where they've had their houses burned down or whatever else. I think my approach trumps that, just in terms of overall thinking there. Of late, I've been doing a lot of work with 7 archangels, and that really has been a relationship where I've really come to them from a place of, I want to work with you. I want to learn. I want to, create this specific type of experience that I'm working with. And if you're open to doing that and you're willing to be here, that would be great. And so it's come from a place of humbleness. And I've started to change all of my approaches with spirits in that way. And not humbleness from the sense of they're better than me or anything like that. No, far from it. But just humbleness in the sense of, if you're willing to make time for me and everything else, and you're willing to work with me, then I'm willing to as well. And I'm willing to come at this from a place of respect and awareness, not from a place of I'm trying to force things or I'm trying to command you or anything else silly along those lines. And not even from a place of, will you do X for me and I'll do Y? It's instead, if you're willing to do this, that would be great. If you're not, that's okay too. I'd really like to work with you regardless. And I found that relationship has also really changed things for me, because what I'm finding is that I'm developing this amazing creative streak in my life right now as a result of working with these archangels. And it's not happening because they're compelled to work with me. Okay. There's nothing that's saying they have to work with me. Instead, it's happening because I'm approaching them with humbleness, because I'm approaching them from a place of respect and wanting to connect with them in a manner where I'm not trying to get something from them, but rather I'm just simply opening myself up to the possibilities of what could happen without expecting anything. And I think that that's really a more mystical approach to magic, but I think it's a beneficial one, because when we open ourselves up to doing work in a manner where we're not expecting something, I think we actually can go much deeper. And I would apply this really to any type of magical work that you could be doing with spirits. Whether you're working with demons or elementals or angels or deities or whatever else, if you're willing to approach it from a place of, I'm here for the experience, not for what I'll get out of it, I think that, that in and of itself can lead to a very deep, abiding relationship that can be very fruitful for you, and it may produce some results for you. Just don't expect them. Like, I don't expect that automatically because I work with them, I'll be creative. It's not like that. It's, I'm working with you, and creativity just happens to be a byproduct of it, and I'm very grateful for it and thankful for it every single day. But I don't expect it every single day, because the fact is it might not be there, and there might, and really it's more about the experience, opening myself to the experience, learning from the experience. Again, it's a different approach. It's one I'm continuing to develop over time. I'll certainly be sharing more as time goes on, but I wanted to share that with you today because I do see this very worrisome trend in magic that there's this notion that, the spirits have to obey you and things like that. And it's simply not the case in my experience. I think that when we open ourselves up to that kind of naive and arrogant belief, we really open ourselves up to an experience that can ultimately not be so beneficial, because we're really stepping in it. Spirits have their own powers and abilities, just like we do. There's reasons they want to work with us. Part of it is because we have the access to the material world and they don't as easily. But just because there's that aspect to it doesn't mean that they have to treat us with respect. And I think the same thing really comes right down to that with us. We can choose not to, but we should, each side of a relationship should always be wary of and recognize that what you put into the relationship is what you will get out of it at some point or another. At some point or another, what you put in can come back to haunt you. It won't necessarily, but it could. And even if it doesn't, there's always going to be part of you that's like, well, what if? And that's not a way to really live if you can help it. I think that's true with spirits. I think it's true with people. I think it's true with the life on Earth itself. Look at the results we're having now. Our planet is changing in ways we can't control because we had this naive, arrogant belief we could control the planet, instead of recognizing that really we're just another living strand that's part of the planet. The planet doesn't need us to survive, but we need it. It's the same thing with spirits. They don't necessarily need us to survive. They get benefit out of us, out of connecting with us. And we get benefit out of connecting with them. But if we go in with this naive, arrogant assumption that we control everything, we're setting ourselves up to fail. All right, that's my 2 cents on it. Feel free to comment, share your own perspective and thoughts, and thanks for watching. Take care.